with a conversation about what for most Nigerians should be a very special day. The Armed Forces Remembrance Day 2024 is here yet again. A very significant day, not just for men and women of the armed forces, but for Nigerians, as we look back, reflect, and appreciate the efforts, the contributions of all those who have, paid the supreme price to make sure that we are, able to call ourselves Nigerians, and we're able to refer to this territory as a sovereign territory. And it goes beyond just appreciation and remembrance. It's also about reflecting on some of the challenges that our fallen heroes, as well as our veterans, have to deal with today, so we can understand and spotlight it as we make reference to what needs to be done to make life even better for them and for the next generation of members of the Nigerian Armed Forces. Joining us on the program is a veteran who also has been appreciated and needs to be appreciated a lot more in the weeks and years to come. Joining us on the program to discuss this is the head of department, Veteran Health Service, Defense Headquarters, retired Lieutenant Colonel Susan Jonah Dibal. Colonel Dibal is the first Nigerian female executive commissioned officer to be promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. She's also an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder, popularly known as PTSD. As always, Colonel, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you too. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
I don't know how to say it. Happy Armed Forces Remembrance Day, or do they say that?
We must be happy.
Right.
Even if there is no happiness, you seek for happiness for yourself.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get down to the brass tacks. This particular day, what does it mean to you as a veteran?
Thank you for that question. Actually, 15th January is a day that if you, as a soldier, has put on this uniform, you remember those that never made it. Especially, I used to tell people, if you have crossed the line of the war, if you have seen your fellow colleague not making it, today is a day that just put them at your mind and say it, rest in peace. Because we weren't better than them that couldn't come back home. It's a day that we remember those that really, really sacrificed for us, those that gave their life, those that felt what they have fallen for is for the country they lived in, the betterment of their family. Today is a day that when you, as a soldier, remember those that are not close to you, because in the career of the army, you could have come as group, and you could have gone to the war as group, but not everybody come back home. And it's not because we are better than them that we are home, it is because that is how the destiny has folded for them. So it is good we remember them, but we should remember them with concern because they left burdens back home.
Speaking of burdens, now the federal government last year in 2023, I think October, we saw the Minister of Defense create a national, what is it called? The National Planning Committee, thank you, for the Armed Forces Remembrance Day that was put together, about 23-man panel for that one. But then apart from, remembering them and keeping them in our minds, and let's not forget there is the living also, people like you. So what is that expectations from the government, to do for even the living veterans and the families of the fallen heroes?
Let me speak for myself. I really, really love this question you have asked. But there are questions that when you ask them, and it's a word that has been said, everybody has heard. All I want to say is that before you do anything, remember that there are people that are left behind. You see, it is not just forming a committee, but it is about understanding that there are people, there are veterans, and apart from these veterans, there are burdens that they left, the widows, the orphans. If we sit today and we said, government should come up with all widows and orphans. I don't think we have that number. So my concern
You're
is...
saying that we don't have a database that can
What
give
I'm
us
trying
a
to
clear
say is that,
picture.
yes, we need a database that an orphan will walk to and check and say, my name is there, so my father died this day.
So there is no all of that put in place.
That is what I, as an individual, want the government to do. Know these people. You have to know them. You don't plan for people you don't know. Get these people on board. Because as a widow, let's say I'm one of them, all she think of every day is that my husband was part of that. And letting widows understand that we are carrying you along. For the Nigerian army, I can speak for that because I've seen it. Schools are paid. Widows are recognized. But I don't understand in other places, in other armed forces. But in the army, I know. But again, the army need to go in totality to look for these widows and orphans and take care of them.
Yeah, just to, to interest our viewers, we're just sharing some of those videos from yesterday's service ahead of today's laying of wreath and other, activities marked for the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. You can see the Chief of Defense Staff there, CG Musa, the Senate President, all part of that service, the Chief of Army Staff, alongside some of the top brass from the Nigerian military. But in all sincerity, we've seen so many of the social media posts where disgruntled soldiers have talked about their poor living conditions, even on the battlefield, for instance. And Nigerians have empathized and sympathized with them to say, listen, we're not, I get it. Going into the military is not necessarily about trying to live wealthy, opulent lifestyles because you're putting your life on the line. But there is a bare minimum that needs to be there to guarantee your safety, to guarantee the security of your own family. What is the motivation like when you talk about current service men and women of the armed forces, especially when they cross-pollinate their ideas with veterans like you? I mean, I get that there's a generational difference between what the military used to be back, a couple of decades ago and what it used to be now, especially under civilian rule. So what are the experiences like, and what can you tell us about it?
Actually, you're right. The army I joined as far back as 1986 is not the same of the army I see today. Because as far back as 1986, joining the army is not all about what you get out of it, but what do you give to the system. And then you could see a soldier standing head to toe to say, I'm a soldier. But today, I looked at the army as a place where there are no jobs. Let me find myself there. And it's all about the alert that comes. But I bet you, even with this kind of soldiers, we still have good soldiers who wants his country to be recognized, who want to be part of the system. And when you talk about welfare, my dear, it's all over. It's not just the army. Things are not easy everywhere. But I want a soldier to understand that no one can ever forget them. So it is right time for them to put in their best. As a soldier, no government will turn back to his men. Because without a soldier, the country is not what you think it is. So anytime I found myself in this kind of, I talk to soldiers, I tell them, give out your best. The society may not recognize you, but if you as a soldier give out your best, even you as an individual will understand that you've touched life.
Talking about, not much society can give. Let's talk about the civilians now. In your own thoughts, what do you think civilians should do in order to show support, in order to honor you know, the veterans that are living amongst us? Because while growing up, when we see a retired military or armed force personnel, what we do is we see there is this amazing, like I am in awe of being in your presence.
In society,
exactly.
yeah.
And these people, farmers tend to bring these things to them. That was way back, but I haven't like experienced something like this. So in your own thought, what do you think the civilians should do in order to show appreciation to these people that while we were sleeping, you know, they were out there fighting the battles for us?
That's a beautiful question. But the thing is, I'm sorry, even you that is seated here, how many soldiers today have you met on the way and said, well done for your job? Do you know a soldier does not need anything from anyone but that word of appreciation? You have done it well. If one soldier dropped today with an idea of bad thing doing, the whole world stand on it. But if a soldier did the good one, no one speaks about it. I want the civilians to understand that this man wearing the uniform just want you to appreciate him. Appreciation by good words. These men have tried. Even if there are some that are bad, don't generalize. Try to understand that the man in the uniform is also having a flesh like you as a civilian. If he has erred, the military can never close their eyes about the bad thing he has done. I want the civilians at all time to appreciate a soldier. See, in other worlds, we've been there, even at the airport. In other worlds, you will see people standing for veterans. That would not happen in our own part of the world. And again, as a veteran today, if I travel to, let's say, US, and I tell the man at the border post that I'm a retiree, because we did not incorporate it in our own country, he does not see us as the same veteran of his own country. We don't get that privilege easy, because back home, who has recognized me? Who has beat a drum for me? If we beat a drum that the world hears that these soldiers are good, these are the same Nigerians that were happy that our soldiers have helped Liberia, have helped Sierra Leone, the West African countries. These are the same soldiers. But it's because the society is changing. And definitely with change, you have bad eggs. Does not mean you should generalize that all soldiers are bad. No, let's appreciate the little a soldier does.
And in talking about appreciating soldiers, we have to talk about the reforms that you know are desperately needed in that area. Because just recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, late last year, after the whole unfortunate incident in Tudunbiri in Kaduna, the Chief of Defense Staff was talking about the welfare situation. He said, even as Chief of Defense Staff, if his operational meal allowance is still 1,300, which makes it quite laughable, especially under the current economic climate, that one would be risking himself, his life, for peanuts, basically. What do you think is standing in the way, and what should we do about some of those reforms, especially that are tied to welfare? Because we've seen so many disturbing videos in the fight against Boko Haram. Soldiers complaining, no water to drink, for instance. We've seen some of our men in the battlefield struggling to feed themselves and things like that. Their allowances getting stuck up somewhere and things like that. How fast should we act on some of these gaps before it becomes really counterproductive? Because you don't want, men who have been trained to protect to, go rogue.
Thank you for that question again. Yeah, the welfare of everyone matters a lot, especially the man that digs his trench to sleep in. You see, there is one thing I used to say, and I say it anywhere, anytime. It is because you were not there. You won't understand what these men go through. For me, I was there. I was in the front line for 4 years. And I understand what it takes for a soldier to leave his family to be in the front line. The government knows that. The system knows that. It's just that now you have people on board that want to tell you the way it is. That's why you had that being said. the way it is, because people does not believe that this is how it is with that soldier in the front line. It's getting to a time that a soldier will just tell you that this is how it is. And it is left for the government to sit, put together a reform that can help these men, because these men are giving it all to what they want.
And I guess partly most of the event today is about remembering those fallen heroes, the fate of their families, or the ones that are still alive today. And we can always talk about their pensions, right? Which is still peanuts, to be honest. Let's talk about what message that is sending to those who are currently serving, because I also get a sense that, you know, it's quite demoralizing, especially when we talk to some of the fine young minds that are deciding to leave. And I think it's becoming a trend now. We see young men who are, you know, close to their prime in the Nigerian army just retire and go into politics or go into business because they're trying to protect their future, so to say. Give me an example, give me a sense of what you think this would mean for our future if things go on this particular path.
Actually, if a country neglects his soldier or his veteran, that country is sitting on a chair that could collapse without you knowing that the legs have gone. The reason I'm saying that is that if you carry along the military, yes, there are some that doesn't have the patient want to retire at prime age, but I bet you a good soldier that knows the rudiment of soldier will wait for his 35 years. He stays to wait because he has understood that this is the job he has joined. Like people like us, if I tell people I'm retired, they say, no, madam, you are not. Yes, I joined the army as a young lady that says, this is the job I want. I want to see how I can contribute my quota. That is what the mind of a soldier should be, contributing, either good or bad. My dear, when we talk about retirement benefits, let the army, with the little we even have, we say thank you. If they add more to you, you still say thank you. Because when you turn back and look at other people's way of retirement, the same country, a soldier will say, I'm grateful. And my dear, let me be honest. The system of retirement benefit and the rest, the government is trying. I'm one. Yes, there are pockets of needs, but these needs are needs that need to sit on a desk, on a table, to see how they can reform these things for betterment of the system. And again, you said, you see the vibrant ones. Yes. The G-well we have today, the young men, they don't know what is there in the army. They just feel, I should be there. But I tell every soldier, you took an oath. That oath should remain with you. To see how you ravish around your country and put in your best. I always tell soldiers, don't wait for somebody to hail you, for somebody to say, well done. Have you sit back by yourself and said, I've tried? Praise yourself if no one praise you. The Remembrance Day is there today. Everybody is celebrating. But I want to say it today. Let the government not just remember the fallen heroes, neither think about the veteran, but let the government see how they can put together things for the fallen heroes' family and the veteran who sit far to look what the system is. I was in the church yesterday. See, let us celebrate those that we need to celebrate, not us celebrating ourselves. Because we need to celebrate some people, put them in the front line, and let the world know these are the people you are celebrating.
There seems to be a little bit of that from this part. I mean, you compared Nigeria to other countries of how they treat their people, and we see these things not only, you know, in movies, but we see it on social media, how these people are recognized worldwide. So coming back to Nigeria now, you made mention of things that need to be reformed, need to be at least addressed, to be opted to a point where Nigerians would feel these people are the people that gave their life for us. They served their life. Not only when you're dead, it's when you get celebrated. So as a veteran, what initiative and programs would you suggest the government should put in place? Also that individuals would also help in making sure that the veterans and their families, the families of the fallen heroes also would feel the impact of serving their country?
I've said it. Maybe you didn't get me. Before thinking of any reform, do you know the numbers of widows and orphans? Because you just don't decide on a program without knowing the people you're trying to create programs for.
Start there.
We start there. Let's know these people, these widows, not those that have find themselves in the bench line, in the front line. How about the widow in the village that after the death of her husband, she went back to their root? Have we looked for her? How about the orphans somewhere? Have we looked for them? Our country, Nigeria, need to understand that there are times that people made you to sleep well. When you hear them passes, give a word of appreciation. Because they are there, they are everywhere. I'm a veteran today, working for the Defense Health Maintenance Veteran Week. What does that mean? The system has tried and has put in place that no veteran should walk into a hospital and pay for hospital bill if you have taken your time as a veteran to register. That is another thing. I speak to all my veterans all over today that watches me. Find time to go and register for your medical health. Right. Yes, somebody may tell you that they don't do it well. Have you tried it? Because I speak so well since the time I took over that so many veterans that have passed through this pipeline, the government is trying on their medical health now. It has been there. But today we speak about it because we don't want a veteran who just lie down there and said, the government is not doing anything for me. No, there is a forum for you. Come out, register, and wherever you are in Nigeria, there are state offices. If you walk into a clinic and they tell you there is no drug, sit there and tell them you are a veteran. No one hears the word veteran within the medical sector and closes his eyes, because that is the point. They need medical help, and the government is doing that. So government should do more. Government should create more things that a veteran will come out and say, I was there and I benefited.
All right. And then talking about that recognition that you spoke about, we've seen in so many other societies where heroes have been appreciated to a certain extent. They're immortalized, right? They become a part of the educational material that the next generation would learn about. We've seen some of those recognitions come but fade away. One case in point was when the military recognized the late Colonel Abu Ali, who later, lost his life alongside some of his men in an ambush by Boko Haram insurgents some few years ago, and I can't believe that it's almost close to 10 years now. But you realize that there are people today who don't even remember that it happened less than 7 or 8 years or 9 years ago, right? In which, brings the question, if we can't remember those fallen heroes who died almost like yesterday, what about those that died 10 years ago or 20 years ago? What do we need to do about that to, immortalize their memory so that it becomes a part of our culture? The whole idea around thank you for your service in the United States of America, for instance, or in Lagos, where soldiers used to, I don't know whether it's still a practice today, when they take the bus, the motorway, they don't pay anything. Also a part of an appreciation. I don't know whether it's still operational today, because of the whole economic situation in the country. But what are those little intangible things that we need to do that serves as a form of gratitude and remembrance that we as a society are not forgetful of the sacrifices that these people make, and that the next set of people are willing to make sure that they protect the territorial integrity of this great nation?
Thank you so much for reminding me of Abu Ali. I was there. I was there, and It's a sad moment because it's a young man that says why this country should be that way. He's not a person from a poor home that you think because it's the poverty that is making him doing that. He's from a very comfortable home, but he went and he conquered. Yes, the army keeps memory for all those people. I want the Nigerian community to know that if you take a step to the resource center by ASO, there are historical things about memories for those who have lost their life. But the federal government needs to see how these people are put in strategic places for someone, for a child growing up to grow up and say, so this man gave his life for me. Right. We need to do that. We need to recognize the fallen heroes in another way, not just remembering them today. Putting their pictures somewhere, putting them in our, making them important. Because yes, they were. Back then, you get promoted, you get this. We need to start recognizing even those that are in the front line with the great things they've done. Let history speak for fallen heroes, not we speaking for them. Let someone put it in the history that this man has done this woman. Women too were there. Women too died. Look for how to put them brighter, that people could see young children coming up will understand. Maybe some, like Abu's children were very small. Let's put him somewhere and this child grow and say, so my father was this man. We need to, the history of Nigeria, the historians of Nigeria should go broad to put this man for our children to read about them.
Indeed.
Thank you.
That would be beautiful.
Thank you very much, retired
much.
Colonel Susan Jonah Dibal, retired but not tired, the first female National Female Executive Commissioned Officer to be promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, expert on post-traumatic stress disorder, and the head of the Department Veteran Health Service at the Defense Headquarters. As he said, it's important that veterans get all the help that they need. Registering, as you said, is one of those important things that they should take advantage of so that they get their sort of medical insurance intact. Thank you most kindly, as always. And if someone didn't say it today, we really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Say really it and say it and say it all through the day.
Okay.
Let's appreciate them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And of course, to all our veterans out there, this day is especially for you. But as always, whether we remember to say it or not, we do really appreciate everything that you've done for this country and that you continue to do in one way or the other. We'll take a moment's break. Daybreak returns in just a moment with more. Join us again.
Thank you for staying with us at the top of this hour. Now, if you missed the first leg of the show, you can catch us via our social media platform and our YouTube live stream for news programs and documentaries. Now, moving on to this segment of another discussion about the aftermath of the election or the Supreme Court's judgment that happened on the 8th governorship ruling. So last Friday, it defined the political career of some governors in Nigeria as the Supreme Court rules in 8 governorship election and races. Now, the thick tension which soaked the affected states suddenly dissolved and turned into celebration after the Supreme Court delivered its verdict in the governorship tussles in Kano, Plateau, Zamfara, Lagos, Bauchi, Abia, Ebonyi, and Cross River states. This morning, I will be analyzing some of the judgments, especially in the cases of Plateau, Zamfara, and Kano states, which received more public attention than others. And of course, we'll talk about the takeaway from the Apex Court judgment as Nigeria's democracy grows. We have in the studio a constitutional lawyer, Mr. Sam Kabo. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria and has handled and won many electoral cases. Good morning and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so
very interesting take, isn't it? More often than not, people remember the ones you win, not the ones you lose.
Exactly. So let's talk about your own take on the result, the verdict of the Supreme Court. Immediately you heard everything that was announced. What was your first reaction?
I saw it coming, and I think I've made a hint here that the first, second standards of those things are usually not much of a concern as what the Supreme Court would say. And I think I've also had to make that as a reason why people should not be too excited about what the decisions at the tribunal and the Court of Appeal, because the Supreme Court is the court of final instance, and the gentlemen there are a little bit much more seasoned, much more circumspect, and they have a better global view of the law than the other cadres of, or the other ranks of the judicial system. So usually when I see people getting too excited and making aspersions at the judicial, I say, oh no, wait a bit. You know, this is not a one-off thing. You know, this is actually a system that by itself, it makes sure that at the end of the day, everybody who follows it up sees that, yes, justice would, at the end of the day, be dispensed to the rightful party.
But you would agree with me that, Abdullah Dawa, you would agree with me that a lot of people had that much expectation of anything could happen during the election. But then there was this fear, majority of people were tilting towards the retaining of the judgments of the tribunal and the appeal court, because out of the blue, it's like a shocker for people saying, two courts are saying this, and then the Supreme Court is coming out to say this. Even the people, the winners of this verdict, also got shockers of their life.
You know, they have an influencing effect, especially when they look at what, if you have a very brilliant court of first instance, there is always that tendency for you to be carried away by their own reasoning. And most of the time to the Court of Appeal, especially for election matters, they don't have too much of a time to look at these things holistically and arrive at a different decision. But the Supreme Court usually takes its time, and by the time the matters come to the Supreme Court, they would have followed it up. And the moment they get the record of appeal, most times they sit on, they make their own conference, and from there they have their thoughts and they share their thoughts. And because they've always been the court of final decision, and because the judgments that are relied upon by the first and second tiers, that is the tribunal and the Court of Appeal, are theirs, they understand those cases much more than those who are relying on them. And because it is theirs, they know the ambit and the limits of those principles. So when cases come to them, it is no longer about you relying on the apex court's decision. This time around, it is the maker of the decision that is reflecting on it based on the facts before it. So they usually stand in a better position to arrive at the right decision. And most of the time, to have said it here, electoral cases are mathematical, and when I see a judgment, you ask me, I would have my doubts. But I wouldn't express it to say, oh, that's a wrong judgment. I would say, let's wait for what the Supreme Court would say. You know, like in the case of Kanu, I have seen so many insinuations that as to say that the apex court was intimidated into making that decision. I can tell you for free, I have had to make the opinion, express the opinion over and over that I do not think those decisions would stand, you know, especially as regards the issues of non-stamping and all of that, because the vote is sacrosanct. For you to nullify a vote, you must have a very concrete reason for that. And most of the time, the law has excused the electoral officials to say where they failed to do this, You understand? They are excused because at the end of the day, as long as the result reflect the wishes of the people, all their mistakes or all their omissions should be excused. You cannot, on the basis of what? The inactions, the omissions, or failures of electoral officers nullify a vote. Because that would mean you yanking off what? The mandate of the people on the basis of technicality.
Yeah, but you do know, Mr. Sam, that there are governors in Nigeria today that are referred to, or rather, I think a governor that has been referred to as Supreme Court governor for obvious reasons, that he came fourth in the election, but somehow he ended up becoming governor after the Supreme Court verdict. That is just to stress the point that sometimes Nigerians have had cause to really worry about the input of the courts when it comes to elections, where the people's decision does not end up being the people's decision because it is, you know, the court override it. But the question I want to ask is, for Nigerians who are watching the program right now, how do you explain to them, if the law is in black and white about what the rules say, how do you explain the tribunal saying one thing, the appeal court doubling down on that same verdict, and then you have a Supreme Court saying, you know what, you don't know what you're saying. You're making a big mistake. That is an error. Because clearly, I mean, in simple terms, that's basically what they're saying.
That is as normal as normalcy can be. If you are a practicing lawyer, that is not something to talk about anyway. Because most of the time, you see, we lawyers, we are nearer to the facts. Is the law subjective? No, it's not subjective. Listen, we lawyers are nearer to the facts. We lawyers are the composers of the narrative of the cases that will present before the judex. You know, sometimes you would be emphasizing the point that this is the issue and this is my view on it, you the lawyer, but the judge has his own views on it. Mind you, these are people we all wrote the same exams with, you understand, and we are all called to the bar, the same bar, and we read the same books, we read the same cases, but because he is sitting there as a judge, he has what? A commanding position over that case. But that does not mean he has the final say. After he would have made his own judgment, I would say, oh yes, thank you, brilliant judgment, but I'll go on appeal to re-emphasize what? My own argument, that if you had looked at it this way as I have actually envisioned it, the decision would have been different. The Court of Appeal might say, oh no, 3 of them, or sometimes 5, they could still agree. But you know that you are right. You still now go. I have had to do that many times. And when I get there, they vindicate me, and I come back and say, I was right. Right, okay. You were wrong. Because that's the way the process works. So coming back, so that we don't close on the over it. You see, the case of Imo State, the bus case, you see, read the case, read the circumstances of that judgment so that you don't just think that the Supreme Court just whimsically gifted the, the governorship to Hopisodema. Mind you, the Supreme Court is blind to the facts, and is supposed to be blind to the fact. The litigation is for the parties. If I bring my own case before you, you think that my case is frivolous, and you do not make any effort to rebut or make a rebuttal. You understand? And I go ahead and prove my case. Mind you, when you go as a petitioner, you are not going to make second and third parties. You are number 4. You are not going to make second and third parties as parties. You go to make what? The person who won. That is the person who has the return, who has been declared a return. He's the person you are going to challenge. If that person now did not do his own homework, and I'm able to prove my case, and I got judgment, you shouldn't say, oh, because what? second and third are
but,
there.
but senior
no, it is not the business of the
senior advocate. You just talked about the sanctity of the votes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We just talked about the sanctity of the vote.
Yes.
And there is no way we can morally justify.
No, well, you say
based
morally.
on technicality.
Well, at the moment you say morally, I give up. Yes.
Yeah. But also, okay,
Yeah.
not morally. Even the spirit of the law itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That judgment goes against the spirit of the law, because the law itself is supposed to be just and fair. And there's nothing just and fair in that particular technicality. I mean, I don't want us to really litigate the emo situation.
No, justice and fairness for the lawyers is what? Procedural. It's a procedural thing. It is not a substantive thing that you say, this is Sam Kagbo. It's a person that is Sam Kagbo at all times. No, it's a procedural thing. That's the way we see it.
When it comes to processes, be fair and be just.
The outcome of that procedure, you understand, would actually transmit into justice as long as the parties who have come before the judges are given the fair hearing. Once both parties are given the same opportunities to espouse their own grievances and contest issues, and at the end of the day, one party has what? An upper hand over the other party, justice has been done.
I still think it defeats the purpose of democracy if just because of the technicality of the second runner-up and the third runner-up not being on the case, the fourth person gets to win because he took the case to court. I still think that there's a lot to be said about that.
To avoid that, perhaps we should go to the continental system. The continental system is not adversarial. The judge is not what? Independent, or the judge is not removed from the fray. He's part of the fray.
Into the battlefield.
He gets into the battlefield because what? He is both finder of facts and a finder of law.
Perhaps we should experiment with that.
But until we get there, things are going to be like this.
Okay, but I asked that question because you know the whole black and white thing is that there are certain principles that don't change, regardless of how you look at it.
Definitely,
right?
definitely.
Say, for instance, in maths, 2 + 2 will always be 4, regardless of how you want to go about it.
That's
right. He said that's
mathematical measurements.
But also when it comes to law, interpretation, for instance, which is the core responsibility of the judiciary. Explain to me the Plateau State situation, for instance. The whole National Assembly was swept away because of the same argument that Governor Muftuan survived in the Supreme Court. Make it make sense, where the same flood waters that took away the seats from the PDP at the National Assembly and State Assembly.
16 of them,
exactly, all of them gone. But the governor survived it. Explain to me how that is possible.
You see, for us to avoid that, the idea that National Assembly cases should stop at the Court of Appeal, those are not legal issues. Those are what I would call policy issues. And the idea is that the Supreme Court should not be overworked. Yes, that makes sense. But this sort of cases calls for what? A review. Mind you, before now, even the governorship elections, they stop at the Court of Appeal. But, sometimes, for the sake of democracy and for the sake of that individual, because the entire essence of the law, the rule of law, constitutional law, is what? To ensure that the individual is what? Prevented or is protected from the harm from what? The majority or the rest of humanity. Is to protect you as an individual. That is what the law is about. And I would therefore, and I have had to say so, that irrespective of how expensive it is, how tedious it is, how torturous it is, let us find a way of standardizing this so that we don't have this sort of mishaps. Definitely, the electorals there would, for the rest of the 4 years, feel such change.
Should the people from the states now go?
No, they have no. They have no other recourse. and no other remedy, because what? The Court of Appeal is the court of final instance in the case of what? National Assembly election. I have had a case where a panel said, when somebody says you are not qualified, they say it's a negative assertion, and therefore it is you that should prove that you are qualified. And I was like,
so the burden of proof is no longer on the person.
It's no longer this. And I was like, seriously? When we were at the Supreme Court, then my junior colleague who went there sent me what do you call it, a note, a WhatsApp note, that this is the decision. I say it can't be. You are not listening to that person. He said that's what it is. But at the end of the day, that's what it is.
All right, so
I was perplexed, but I told the client that, what can we do? That is the court of final instance. They said, oh, what do we do? Can we go to the NJC? I said, you would have to prove what?
Yeah, but isn't there? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about justice and not just judgments, right? Because it has to also be, you know, those judgments or verdicts have to meet the letter and the spirit of the law, so that there's an alignment, isn't it?
Yes.
To Subi's point exactly, where is the recourse there? Because at the end of the day, people feel such a change. I mean, I beat you fair and square in the election, and the law says, listen, these are pre-election matters. They cannot determine, you know, election matters now. And you go to the court, and then they sit on a pre-election matter and nullify my election and give it to somebody. There has to be a course correction here, surely.
Tomorrow, that may come, but for now, none. And let me also say this. I've had to say so over and over. You see, there's a very thin line between pre-election matters and post-election matters. The very clear ones are issues of nominations. Those
qualification.
No, not qualification. Qualification too, we've had to battle it in so many ways that the line is still very thin. You understand? But issues of nomination, I would have thought that by now that had been solved. But because of the decisions coming from the plateau jurisdictions, I would think that there should be a kind of a revisit of both the law itself and perhaps the issue of where the National Assembly cases should end. I would also want to make the proposition that we can still make use of retired justices of the Supreme Court. I can tell you for free, a 70-year-old man or a 75-year-old man is still very lucid and very calm and still can do the job. We see that happening in America. Why don't we get them involved in the election petition so that if the issue of overburdening the Supreme Court is what justifies National Assembly cases to stop at the Court of Appeal, we can have a kind of a middle of the road course whereby we now constitute a special panel of the Supreme Court for that purpose only. And that's special. To receive and treat appeals from the Court of Appeal. So that if we have any available and willing Supreme Court justice, we can, you understand, get them involved. In other places, next door to us here, Cotonou and other places, they have constitutional courts. Those ones are purely for these matters, so that they do not interfere with the everyday court processes and matters. But now, we have all other matters standing still until they finish the election matters. And the cases are too many for one to think that even if you now want to say, let matters go to the Supreme Court, not with this number They have just recently risen the number to 19. Even as at that, it's still a very Herculean task for them to handle all of this. But for the sake of justice, like I said, for the sake of democracy, deepening democracy, I do not think that we can stop at any length to ensure that we prevent this sort of mishaps. Because these ones could be purely legal errors. Because you could go that route so very easily. And once there has been a decision, there is always that tendency for us to follow that decision so that what? You reinvent the wheel.
So in 2027 it's coming, right?
Yes.
So it's just a matter of time. I mean, we're in 2024 now, so it's rushing. But then what do you think that this judgment would impact in the political landscape in Nigeria, considering we're seeing different judgments on different particular issues? And you made mention of a lot of things that could help that kind of situation. But what about the political landscape now? What do you think they need to do in order to avoid all of these things that happened in the first place?
Well, the politicians are the lawmakers. They are the lawmakers. Yeah. You understand? The judiciary only act on the law. So I would think that the first response is for them to revisit the law, the electoral law. As bad as it is, because it's always been after every electoral session, they review the Electoral Act. But even as that, there is always this sort of cases coming up to give some new challenges. But that's the nature of man. That's the nature of the social and political process. It always throws up its new nuances and challenges. It is for them to react. Then now, for what has happened there, it's for the politicians to know that sometimes you win unfairly, sometimes you win. It is for them to talk to their people to say, hey, we've lost this. But all is not bad. We've gotten the governorship and we'll find a way. I have seen some reactions there. Somebody saying, I hope that is not true. The speaker saying he is what? A person non grata to all of the 16, more or less. That is going to wreak some havoc to the state because those ones are going to put a resistance. Because what? The law has given them what? A mandate.
Yeah. Okay. Just before we go, very quickly.
Yes.
What do we do and what is the operational standard procedure here when judges give judgments like this? I mean, everybody in every sector, we have a performance review. Give me a sense of what the NGC does about some of these unfortunate verdicts that make Nigerians scratch their heads about, you know, whether that is in alignment with the idea of justice. I mean, do we review their performances? Are these judges, you know, queried for giving some of these judgments? Because you realize that if you're going through the judgment of the Supreme Court, it's an indictment on the judge that gave, you know, that particular, or the panel of judges that gave that particular verdict in the first place. So what are we doing about that so that we can improve the quality of the judgments going forward? Because if there is no recourse, so to say, they can do this over and over again because there's no, you know.
I agree with you, that's an indictment, but you see, it's normal, except if you impute malice, that those judgments are actuated by malice or fraud. I wouldn't think so. I would not want to go that route. It could be an error. But the agency also reviews. Of course, they would have to sit again to have a kind of a review of the cases and be informed by that. But also, anybody who is at the Court of Appeal should be dreaming of going to the Supreme Court. And most of the time, what is taken into account is what? The soundness of your judgments. The soundness of your judgments. And that is why I strongly believe that those judgments may not have been actuated by malice or fraud. It is just an error. But those sort of errors also may not go into your favor, because when they ask you to submit your own judgment, I do not see you submitting a judgment that the Supreme Court has overturned. You understand? So most of the time,
that's so in the interest of self-preservation, they wouldn't want to do this naturally to themselves, if not in error. Because they
would not. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They would not, because except if you are not ambitious. But I would think that for you, as a lawyer who has been given the benefit and the opportunity to sit on the bench, your dream should be to go to what? The Supreme Court. Just like for us, the practitioners, the dream is for you to be a senior advocate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kagbo, Sam Kagbo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about these issues.
Thank you very much.
All right. Of course, and now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, it will be time to look at the front pages of the national dailies this morning. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you very much for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Time to look at the front pages of some select national dailies today to bring you up to speed with the stories making the headlines across some of the front pages. And we're going to start with a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today. Starting from the top, airlines trapped funds. Pressure mounts despite $61 million release. Why is that? More on page 23. 100 days of war on Gaza. Israel kills 23,968 Palestinians and counting. More on that devastating situation on page 38. How about this one? Trending story over the weekend. Probably going to ruin your mood this morning. Bandits hold 5 sisters after killing one in Abuja. Demand 100 million naira. Pantami's friend raises 50 million naira. 4 other captives killed in Kaduna. Ilorin Union urges federal government to rescue abductees. The police says we have intensified rescue operations. And you can see that beautiful family that has been completely torn apart by this particular incident. And this just becomes emblematic, Sumaya, of what many other families have had to go through with this kidnapping and banditry activities across the country. More on this story on page 3. Super Eagles avoid upset against Equatorial Guinea. You know this year's slogan, right? No grief for anybody. None of the underdogs in AFCON are agreeing for anybody. Ghana was collecting, Egypt was collecting. Every top team that normally gets to cruise over these much smaller teams are just collecting goals. And we beat this team actually, the last 2 times we met, Equatorial Guinea. But we had to, come from a goal down to get a point. Let's see how the rest of the journey continues for the Super Eagles. More on the latest of AFCON on page 39. Arewa Consultative Forum, Northern Elders Forum meet over North's challenges, and it has everything to do with security. Federal Capital Territory primary school teachers begin strike today. What? I thought school just resumed. Well,
it's the right time to
don't
hit
go
the
on strike
federal
when you're
government.
on holiday, do you? So I guess now is the perfect time. Well, anyway, these are some of the stories you can find on the pages of today's Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, let's move on to The Nation. From the top of the page there, wasteful Eagles fail to win the AFCON opener. Shocker for Ghana and Egypt. You find that on page 38. Food forex pressures the push inflation to 29%. Experts hopeful on recovery. Edo 2024, the APC invites Oshomole, Ize-Iyamu and others. Ikimi, we are with Igodalo. Okay, you'll find that on page 5. Below the headmaster there, President won't spare culprits after probe into Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. We're camping on that.
can of worms is...
Indeed. The major story here says Supreme Court verdict, APC did not trade off Kano and Plateau. It's purely a legal matter, and victorious governors hailed Tinubu's non-interference. I mean, it shouldn't even need to be any praise.
Morally speaking, you realize that that was justice, because at the end of the day, who actually won the election? Indeed. These individuals who survived the Supreme Court ruling. So, indeed, yeah, not many people are really upset about it.
All right, away from that, government to change approach on disco's funding. Electricity distributors fall to pay dividend in 12 years. President gets kudos for anti-graft moves. Below there, we see LIRS affirms January 31st deadline for annual tax returns submissions. And then right now we'll head on, of course, due to time, to talk about these things, review the topic. We have Dr. Lanre Oluniyi, a public affairs analyst, joining us to review the papers this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's start by, the horrific, situation happening that has kept the streets and even Nigerians in general at a very tense situation about the 5 sisters that are still being abducted and the situation that happened, in Bwari Area Council of Abuja. What is your take on everything, the situation? I mean, one thing you would say is if we keep even giving these people money to get this, to get the abductors out, then it's like pushing them to say, okay, go on, continue doing this. But then right now they are putting a stamp with their foot down, saying we are going to kill somebody if you don't do it. If we give them this money, don't you think that it would give them this boost of saying, okay, next, if we don't get it, we can easily kill people and use it as example?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I know bandit issues is a dicey game. It's neither here nor there. There are many angles you must look at this situation. If you could remember when they started in Sanfara towards Castina, the former governor of Kaduna State said, Nasir El-Rufai, that he would never pay ransom to any bandit. Immediately he said that, they moved down to his state. And they started kidnapping, all sorts of things that happen in Kaduna State. Is it good to pay them ransom? They will tell you it's not encouraging. Because the more they get the money, the more they use the money to get more ammunition for themselves. Is it good to leave our sister in their custody because we don't want to pay money? The answer is no. Are we supposed to fight these people like a guerrilla warfare so that we attack them at the same time we lost some victims? That's why I tell you, it's neither near or there. I say we are just deceiving ourselves. The only way forward is that there are people among the system, there are people in the community, there are people among us that are in collaborative with them. So until you get those people, I could remember when the former governor of Kaduna State shut down network, shut down my motorcycle in Kaduna about 2 months, they discovered that a lot of the motorcyclists are part of these people. They are the ones going out there to get them recharge card, to get them food, to get them information. So when I say it's near, not there, I know I don't want to go deep. I can only just give you just the tips of the iceberg. So that's why people that have deeper knowledge can go and ruminate on it.
Yeah, but also there is a sense of acceptance, isn't it? That we've accepted that this is the reality and there's nothing we can do about it. When for most people, this is at a crisis point where you declare a state of emergency to show the urgency that we're really trying to go nuclear on these groups that are not necessarily bigger than the Nigerian military or security architecture itself. Is it fair to say that we're not deploying and showing that will to get rid of banditry, and that is why incidents like this keep popping
Yeah,
up?
if you understand my background, what I'm trying to lay on ground, you will discover that this is not a guerrilla warfare. This is not like Boko Haram in Borno. This is a battle that is within us, and they have a lot of victims around them as a shield. That is the reason why the former President Muhammadu Buhari, they refused to use Super Tucano on them. Because if they use Super Tucano on them, we are going to lose a lot of victims in their custody. So it's not something that they can sporadically wipe them out, because you violate the international law.
Yeah, but they don't have victims at all times. I mean, we have taken them out most recently in Nasarawa State just this weekend. Another bandit leader was eliminated. And we've seen so many of these victories happen over the past couple of months, where through targeted strikes, the Nigerian Air Force and the Nigerian military has successfully carried out operations that neutralize some of these groups in their pockets of operations. But Nigerians don't get the sense that the government is going at it in all cylinders. It is not firing in all cylinders trying to get rid of the situation. Do you think that that is a fair assessment, that we're not deploying everything that we have at this phenomenon?
You know, to be fair to this government, to this present government, there is a lot of improvement. Let's be sincere.
Would you say
I'm not here to
security?
defend the government, and I'm not a spokesperson of the government, but let's be sincere, because issue of banditry from where it is before, from till now, we are not happy about this situation, but as far as I'm concerned, the case is just a skeletal issue now, unlike before. You will check before the election, all manner of 100 kidnapping, 150 student kidnapping.
Even at the,
no, I'm not saying it's not
we
happening.
agree
I'm not
that
saying
the
it's not
federal
happening.
government is working, but would we say that the people are feeling the impact of what the federal government is doing?
For now, you can't feel the impact if your family or relative is in the custody of bandits. To be fair and to be just, are you getting it? But to be realistic, I will tell you that as far from the time they change all these army chiefs and other stuff, especially this government, there has been a lot of drastic reduction from the way they operate. That's the truth. We knew what happened on a daily basis or weekly basis between Jere to Abuja Junction in Kaduna. We knew what happened in those aspects. For the past 34 months, we have not been able to hear any tangible, are you getting it? Any tangible mass or abduction.
Okay, on that particular note, if we can circle back to what Sumaya asked a little later, we're seeing a new trend develop, and we don't know if this is going to happen with other bandit groups across the north or other parts of the country, where they usually hold the victims for long. I remember in Zamfara with the Federal University of Gusau students, the bandits came out and said, listen, we're tired of taking care of them, feeding them is proving to be a strain. We're going to kill them if you don't pay the ransom. That is usually the threat. We're going to kill. This time around, we're seeing them actually killing people to send a message, because the family called when they asked for 60 million and say, we're unable to raise all of the money, but we have half of the money. And then they decide to kill one of the girls just to send a message, and then jack up the ransom demand to 100 million. What does that tell us about how much harder it's going to be to deal with these bandits, especially if they begin to operate this way?
You know, like I said, it's a funny thing that we cannot, people were mounting prayer on the former president that they should declare them terrorists. It's a funny thing that they have not yet been declared as a terrorist.
But they have been treated like terrorists.
Yes, and the way they operate is too high. And that is the reason why Nigeria government cannot go after them like a terrorist. That's to be kind. It's a failure on any government, on any lives that is being lost in the country. We agree on that. But to deal with these people, for instance, we have Super Tucano. Are you getting it? And anytime, if Nigeria government engage this banditry with Super Tucano, the international community will frown at it. That when you told us you want to use super, you want to buy super Tucano, you told us you are going to use it to fight terrorism. That is why we allow you to get this instrument. So any instrument that is beyond it, because they have not seen banditry as a terrorist group, they still see it as a criminal act being perpetrated within the country, that they should look for another mechanism to deal with them. So the onus is now on our military men to see what they can do before this, because they have been using that tactics for a long time. That is of bring this. There are some people that they even collected money from them, they still kill them. Okay. Yes, they will collect the whole money in your presence, in the presence of the people that brought the money, they shot the victims. So it's not a good incident in our community, in our nation, but I still believe that the only way out is let the military start looking for more alternatives, because we'll have wiped, people believe that, oh, we can wipe them out. Okay. And we can quickly look at the forest, throw bomb there, throw this there. Yes, but quote and unquote, there is no any president that wants to be charged for genocide after you leave office. That is why you can see every president is being careful about banditry.
I think we can live with that if it brings us an end to the banditry situation in the country. But let's segue and take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper, because I think we have some of the headlines that we can quickly take a look at, especially with developments from the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry investigations that is looking into the past activities of the former minister, Sadia Umar, the current suspended minister, Bete Edu, and the national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency, Halima Salih, who is also embroiled in all of the controversy. The presidency says there will be no sacred cows as far as this investigation is concerned. And we're yet to get any sort of feelers from the EFCC because investigations are underway. But the president has doubled down to set up a committee that would look into reforming the activities of the ministry, and it will be chaired by the the Minister of Economy, Wale Edun. Give me a sense of what you've seen so far and what that says about the fight against graft under the current administration.
It's a welcome idea, because so far so good, I believe Nigerians are a little bit happy to this incident, because immediately they got the information and it reached the presidency, and there is immediate action. Suspension first, reliever of her duty, and let her face the investigation. She reported herself to the anti-graft agency. Fine. So the only thing we can appeal to the government is that we don't want this case to look like the other cases that Nigeria have been hearing. Because one thing about this country is that you just hear, and I want to appeal to the media, they must follow up these cases to a letters. Because all this today, me, I'm not moved all the time by all this noise. Former governor has been arrested. Former governor has been charged to court. What happened after 2-3 times in the court? And when they say that every Nigerians have gone back to their base, that's the end of the matter. So
you're cautiously optimistic about what to expect?
Yes.
Okay.
Even after the president has given his own word, is saying that nobody is going to be spared. I mean, this is the president that we're seeing.
It's not today we are hearing president to say he has given his word. You can hear President Buhari all the time. I assure you to go and do this. Forget all this. Okay. We have used to all those ones.
Let's wrap up on this is what Nigeria can do to you, actually. Let's wrap up on the Supreme Court developments. Your 2 cents on that. What we're hearing right now is that, listen, there was no arrangement outside of or under the table to spare Kano or Plateau State. The governor has come out to say, listen, the president could have easily influenced the Supreme Court to get rid of me. He didn't do it. We're hearing that Kano, no side deals were made to keep Abba Kabir in place. I mean, even if that is true, it tells us that, some of these deals are really happening, and that's why they're saying that it didn't happen this time. Your thoughts on that?
One of the major things that always make me unhappy in this country is because we are not yet become a nation that institutionalize our system. The system does not flow on its own. Executive branch flow on your own, legislative flow on your own, judiciary flow on your own. But it's unfortunate that the executive arm, you will be, as at this time, you will be talking that executive arm is influencing the judiciary arm.
It's like an older brother, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's always, it does not make the democracy have any meaning to us any longer. Because because everybody just believe if Mr. President want to do this, he will have done that. What is that? Is not even a narrative.
It's an indictment to actually say that.
All right. So, thank you so much for your time, for joining us to review the front pages this morning. Dr. Larry Oluniyi, Public Affairs.
Oluwaniyi.
Oluwaniyi.
I knew there was an A somewhere that was missing because I've never heard of Oluniyi. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much. All right. All right, and with that, of course, we have come to the end of Daybreak on Trust Television. Please do stick around. At the top of the hour, Emmanuel Fashimi will bring you 360 Sports, where you can talk about the AFCON. I am Sumaya Abubakar. Do have a lovely week.
My name is Abdullah Ahmed. Thank you, as always, for your time and company. Daybreak returns tomorrow live at 8 a.m. Until then, good morning. Have a lovely day.